Hey there, welcome to another lecture talking about the president and the use of power by the president. This one in particular is going to look at how the president interacts with Congress, which is a good bridge into the next piece that we study, which is the budget-making process and how these two entities, the legislative and executive branches, have to work together to produce the national budget. So sit tight, here we go, take some notes. Get ready to ask and answer questions when we get back into class. If we look at the bill-making process, we've already talked about this as the chief legislator. Once it gets to the president, you have a couple of questions the president can ask and can do. The first one is obviously veto it, send that bill back to Congress. It can be overridden. 2/3 of both houses can vote to override the veto, and it becomes law against what the president wanted. There's the pocket veto, which is letting the bill die and not signing it within 10 days if Congress is adjourned. They got to give the president 10 days to look at it, sign it, and get it back to them. If they adjourn while he's sitting on a bill, well, he can not sign it and stick it in the pocket of his desk, and the bill is dead. If the president does nothing with the bill in front of him, after 10 days the bill becomes law, according to the Constitution. There used to be a time when the president had a line item veto. In fact, most state governors have the line item veto power, but not the president. We'll talk about that here in a second. The line item veto question, though, looks at a period of time. Many presidents, Republicans and Democrats, have asked for it. Reagan, quite famously, in the mid-1980s in the State of the Union, asked for the line item veto power from Congress. President Bill Clinton got the line item veto power, and ultimately in 1998 the Supreme Court said no. That really oversteps the boundaries of the Constitution and is the ultimate power and authority held with one person, the President of the United States. In class, I want to talk about this question about the line item veto power, and I want to hear your perspectives on whether or not you think the Constitution should be amended to allow the President to use line item veto power. Why would the president request this power? How would they use this power? How is it beneficial? What are the potential costs and circumstances we have to consider about amending the Constitution to say this? So let's consider those things for class, especially on the line item veto question. So when the president gets a bill, the president can either veto the bill or sign it and enforce the law. That's traditionally the way we look at these two perspectives. There's a third piece, though, and it's this maybe question. And what this deals with is a concept called signing statements, which has become quite popular in the last two presidencies. So I want to share a video with you about signing statements and what those look like and the effects of those on the legislative process. If we look at these signing statements, the basic point of a signing statement is the president wants to support the certain parts of the law, and so the president's going to sign them, but then the president is issuing a statement saying, well, the other parts that I don't like, I'm just not going to enforce. The question that we really look at now is the constitutionality of this. Either you sign it and enforce all parts of it, or you veto it and you say to Congress, hey, go fix these problems and then I'll sign it and enforce what you give me, and here's what I want to have fixed. The way that we operate now under the current system is a more recent innovation are these signing statements that basically say, hey, there's no reason for me to enforce all of this. I'll just only enforce the parts that I like. If we look at those ideas of signing statements, the signing statement is essentially, if you got that from the video, an extra note on the bill from the president that says, I only like parts of this and I'm only going to enforce parts of this. Or these are the parts that I'm going to enforce and I don't agree with those parts over there. They are not part of the Constitution. They never have been part of the Constitution. George W. Bush, as noted here, increased their use, and Barack Obama has continued that trend. And many of these things, of course, face challenge in the courts, and but yet they still happen. So there's sort of that maybe there is key. Just because they either sign the bill and enforce the law or they veto it, well, no, they can sign it and only enforce the parts that they like. And then that becomes a constitutional question that we look at in this legislative process. I want to talk about mandates and this idea of when a president can use the idea of a mandate. That's the perception that the voters are in strong support of the president's policies and positions, and that moving forward with that mandate, whatever it might be, they can kind of push legislation through Congress and say, hey, the people want this, the people need this, the people are saying it, let's go out and get this for them. Mandates, however, are very infrequent, but they claim a mandate anyways. A classic example is Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, whatever you want to call it. But if you look at the mandate idea, it was pushed through Congress on very narrow margins, and their question was whether or not there was a mandate. Vast majority of people out there that wanted this sweeping legislation. It relies on a president's high level of approval rating. I want to show you sort of what this looks like now. This is the most recent information from the Rasmussen report, a polling agency, and this is in red the number that strongly disapprove of the president, and in green the number that strongly approve. There's a negative 17 number, meaning that the difference between the strongly approve and strongly disapprove is 17 percentage points. So while Barack Obama might claim to have a mandate to do something, it is clearly not the case in this current system. And doesn't really have a lot of mandate to push any legislation through, which of course is why you see most of the things Barack Obama proposes stall within Congress. If we look, though, it does take a lot of legislative skills to be president of the United States. That's bargaining, making personal one-on-one appeals to members of Congress, setting the priorities in the State of the Union address. This skill set, though, is so important in bargaining with Congress. They have what they want, the president has what they want, and to be most effective, the presidents have to use that honeymoon period. They have to use that time right after they're elected, and they have as much political capital as they probably ever will have to get the things passed that they want. For example, you see a lot of evidence to show that that's why the Affordable Care Act was put at the very first part of the president's first term, because there was a honeymoon period for him, and he was able to get it done, however narrowly. The president, though, in his legislative powers, is, even though they don't have the ability to create legislation, they're the agenda setter. And as the figurehead of our country, they're the ones that really do set that agenda. So, that being said, we'll talk about all of these things in class. Make sure you've got any questions written down that we can go over. But we really want to take a look at the Lineitem Veto and whether or not that's a step in the right direction in terms of amending the Constitution. That's all for now. We'll see you next time on the web.